I do. We are indeed finished, Mr. Chair.
As the Chair pleases. Dr. Young, I'll just ask you a few preliminary questions relating to your background. I believe, according to your statement, you joined the South African Defence Force during 1976.
I was called up for national service, yes. I didn't join it, the normal course. I was called up for national service.
You became a member of the South African Defence Force in 1976.
Yes, that's correct.
And in the history of this country, 1976 is significant.
There were, from what I remember, in my own life, it was fairly significant because I served in the in the SADF in 1976.
Yes, and it was also the time of the Soweto uprising.
Yes, that's correct.
The result of your interest in the Defence Force, I believe you got interested in defence electronics.
Yes, I did some of my service in Electronic Warfare Unit 2 Signal Regiment, and during that year I switched from being interested in chemical engineering to electronic engineering.
And the following year, 1977, the United Nations Security Council passed a mandatory arms embargo against South Africa.
Yes, I know that from the history.
And that embargo was tightened and extended in 1986 by Resolution 591.
Okay, I'll accept that. I have no personal knowledge of it.
Were you involved in any activities which were directed at breaking or going round that embargo?
Not that I can remember.
Are you certain about that?
Well, I only started working in the defence environment in 1985. So certainly up until then, it is impossible that I could have been. And then I was a fairly junior engineer or employee of a company. So I can't imagine that I was purposefully or at my own volition involved in anything breaking the arms embargo.
Let's move on to the stage when you were working on the information management system. That's technology development and technology retention. When was that? When did you start working on that?
For what I remember, technology development started in maybe it was late 93 or early 94, and that was under Project Diodon, and technology retention happened with Project Suvex from 1995.
And that was at a time when you had founded your company, C squared, I squared.
Yeah, the information management system, as a proper noun system, was developed by our system, by our company, and the previous project when I worked at UEC Projects, probably in the short period of 1990, we had been working on some technology aspects, related aspects, but not so much the IMS, but certainly related in, I think it was the first half of 1990.
Would it be correct to say in general terms that you were actually nurtured and sustained by the South African defense establishment, in particular Arms School? That's you and your company.
No, not in the slightest. We might have got some contracts, but it wasn't from the point of view that we were nurtured and sustained. As I've said, my evidence is that after I left my previous company with UEC Projects, we weren't in contact with Arms Corps in the slightest until I think it was September 1992 when Arms Corps made contact with me. I remember the phone call from Anton Jordan, and he invited me to relook at, or to re-involve myself in this technology because of my own particular capabilities. It was nothing to do with nurturing. It was all to do with capability.
At that time, didn't you have close relationships with Arms Corps and also with the South African Navy?
We had normal working collegial relationships, nothing more than that.
Would it not be correct to say that you were their blue-eyed boy?
Not in the slightest. As said, in fact, if you say that now, I would consider that in a positive context, well, hopefully. But other than the tiny little bit of knowledge that I had of system integration that we'd done in the 1985 to 1989 period for a submarine, and that's really 6 months worth of work on the forerunner of this local area network. I was just a tiny pipsqueak, and I didn't even know high-level people in Arms Corps. The only people I really knew were my immediate sort of colleagues, what they called ASDMs, Arms Corps Specialist Division Managers, and fairly low-ranking people in the Navy from typically the rank of even commander and downwards. So I couldn't possibly, if I was a blue-eyed boy, I was a blue-eyed boy at a pretty low level.
Let's move on to your activities whilst investigating the special defense packages. You have been investigating them for the past 16, 17 years?
Well, I wouldn't put it in the kind of investigating them. 17 years ago, I think the date was the 7th of July, 98, it came to our attention that our IMS was likely to come under attack. And so my interest in that aspect happened then. But in terms of investigating what went wrong, probably when I was approached by the Special Investigating Unit, I think it was May 2000, one could say my interest escalated to an investigative mode, but I certainly wasn't investigating externally other than the records and what happened in my company. I certainly didn't start investigating it until I realized that, first of all, I had to do something on my own, and secondly, I started collaborating with external investigating entities.
You gave evidence before the joint investigating team.
It sounded like a statement. If the answer is did I, the answer is yes.
If I make a statement, I intend you to react to it.
I appreciate that, but I'm waiting for, I thought that was an introduction part, so if I may just ask, invite me to make the response rather than just expecting me to do so.
Is it correct that you walked out of that investigation?
Not entirely. That's not entirely correct, and not the correct way of looking at it. Is I completed my evidence before the public hearings. The joint investigation was a much wider thing than just the public hearings. It involved that was what was called the public phase, and I gave my evidence very comprehensively in terms of a 58-page aide-memoire, not dissimilar to what I've done here in terms of my witness statement. I certainly did have a lot of documents available, which are referred to in my aide-memoire. They were not referred to, but they were certainly made available by me. And then I went through cross-examination until at the lunchtime on the Thursday, and only the previous day my legal team advised me that there were going to be rebuttal witnesses in the form of two Navy admirals, Admiral Simpson Anderson and Admiral Carmerman, and look, I know how long it takes to give this kind of evidence, and in any case.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Dr. Young, please answer the question.
I did.
Just hold on. Rocket Moran, can you just repeat the question? Let's see if you can get an answer.
Question is a very short and simple one. Did you walk out of the JIT?
Okay. Unfortunately, one cannot give a simple answer. My legal team and myself left the public hearings, not the JIT, just the public hearings, after I had completed my evidence, including cross-examination. That's the first, but it's important to put the context here. So if you had to ask me simple, if I had to give a yes or no, and I don't think I'm obliged or obligated or constricted by giving yes or no's, I'm allowed to give a proper answer. And if I'm not allowed to give a proper answer, then I will accept an interjection from the chairperson to tell me that I can only give yes or no answers. But I completed my cross-examination. We listened to the evidence of Admiral Simpson Anderson, and when the evidence of Admiral Karmerman started, my senior counsel, who's now a judge, said excused ourselves from the chairperson. That's not walking out. He said, I have to be in Cape Town tomorrow. We did not know that this was going to carry on till Friday. I've not been retained. I've got a unavoidable commitment tomorrow, and he excused ourselves. It is on the record. I can find that in the transcript of that. So the short answer is we did leave, but after my cross-examination, and it wasn't me, I would have stayed there if I'd had to, but my senior counsel could not be there, and he excused himself and us as well at the same time. So the short answer, if you have to have one, the bald one, is no, we did not simply walk out.
Is it correct that you left that hearing before Admiral Kammerman had given his evidence?
No. We stayed as long as we could. He had started giving his evidence, and it actually became clear because we were only handed his witness statement. In fact, I saw it after we'd already sitting down that this was going to be very lengthy, and we left in order to catch the aeroplanes. But certainly he had already started, and I can also tell you, in terms of the practicalities, the Admiral Karmerman continued until mid-afternoon on the Friday, and so even if we had stayed, we would not have been able to do anything about his evidence unless we came back the next week.
The purpose of sitting and listening to the first part of his evidence was to enable you and your counsel to cross-examine him, not so?
No, it was actually, it was first of all to see how long this would be. As I said, I think my legal team only got handed a one-page summary of his evidence, or a very short one. A couple of minutes before we sat down, I only started reading it. A couple of minutes after he started giving in his evidence in chief, and it was just a matter of that we were there. While we were there and didn't have to catch a plane, I don't say it was politeness. I was only a witness there. I had a senior counsel, a junior counsel, an instructing attorney, and 2 or 3 legal assistants there. I was just a simple witness, and I followed what I had to do. I was confronted by a situation. Sure, normally the client gives instructions, but I couldn't give an instruction to Owen Rogers to stay there when he had a plane to catch. So it certainly wasn't. Look, if it had been very, very short, just a couple of minutes, maybe we could have cross-examined. But as it turned out, it carried on. In fact, I think it went on the Thursday and the Friday until certainly after lunch, from I can remember, sort of mid-afternoonish on the Friday.
The upshot of this is that you did not dispute Admiral Kammerman's evidence.
That's not correct. The junior counsel, I remember his name is Guy Elliott, made a submission, as did many other parties, including parties who hadn't even attended as witnesses, like the ADS representatives. So we certainly did dispute it in terms of that submission.
I'm talking about you and your counsel.
No, it was impossible to cross-examine in that way, because it had been put on the record as well that Admiral Karmerman would be returning to Germany on the Saturday morning, and even if he had been there, even if we had stayed to listen to his evidence in chief, there would have been no prospect whatsoever for cross-examination.
There was a sequel to your walking out, which you deny. Not so?
Well, I suppose there's the sequel why I'm still sitting here 15 years later. So if you would like to elaborate which particular aspect of I would consider that.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. Talking about the action that you instituted against the public protector, Mr. Bagwa.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
You sued him for defamation.
That's correct.
Because of an allegation you attributed to him that by leaving or walking out of that hearing, that action could be interpreted as cowardice.
Yes, unfortunately, it seems certainly for us the only court case I've ever lost. But that was the case. The only thing that I think I realized later was that the attribution of cowardice wasn't necessarily made by he himself, but by a spokesperson in his office. And we didn't realize that at the time when we drew up the action for damages and the particulars of claim.
Well, as you have backhandedly conceded, you lost that case. Your claim was dismissed with costs, including the cost of 2 counsel.
That's correct.
Now, in your investigation of this arms procurement process, did you collaborate with certain people who have given evidence before this commission?
I would putting the word collaborate too high. I have spoken informally, briefly, telephonically to a couple of people, but certainly the word collaborate would be putting it too strongly.
Was one of these persons Miss Patricia DeLille?
No.
Was one of these persons Mr. Terry Crawford Brown?
We've certainly discussed the matter. Well, I mean, clear that's common cause, because he asked, when he instituted the application to the Constitutional Court for a commission of inquiry, he then asked me to supply a supporting affidavit, which I did. So the answer to that is yes.
Was one of these persons Dr. Gavin Woods?
There's been no collaboration. There's only been a discussion of the fact that we that we are witnesses, but there's been no collaboration other than that.
Didn't you send him some documents?
When would that be?
You would know if you had sent him some documents, or you have not sent him documents.
So this thing's been going on for this whole investigation, as you refer to it, has been going on for 15 years. So certainly in the last 15 years, I have sent him documents, but I cannot remember sending him documents in respect of collaboration of in the context of this commission.
Of course, you know you sent him documents relating to the arms procurement process.
Yes, I have, but that's not necessarily in regarding of this of as witnesses in this Commission.
Well, I won't dwell on that. Now, do you have any personal contact or any personal dealings with President Mbeki?
No, I don't think I've ever even seen him in the flesh.
Minister Manuel?
Likewise.
Minister Modise?
I shook his hand once in London at a defence show.
And that's the sum total of your personal interaction with him?
Yes, well, he died not that much later than that, so yes, I would say that's the only time probably I've seen him. We happened to be at the same exhibition together.
Mr. Jeff Radebe?
No, I've never had anything directly to do with him.
So would it be correct to say that you actually do not know any of these persons personally?
That would be correct.
I'd like to refer you to what you say in your website about some of these people. I refer in this connection to Volume 1, the index of the bundle for cross-examination, Dr. Young. Yes. That's okay. That's okay. That's the bundle that was handed in by the Department of Defense.
I think
Page 4. I know you have been asked about some of these things, but with particular reference to President Mandela. Now, I represent the other people. The entry of the 16th of February 2014, that was the day before Mr. Alec Irwin gave evidence before the commission. You referred to, the first one you referred to is Irwin and his grand Lasaniers, Mandela, Mbeki, Modise, Manuel and company, had this golden goose well and truly plucked, stuffed, peri-peried, drawn and quartered.
Yes, I see that.
What evidence did you have to describe Mr. Alec Irwin, Mr. Mbeki, Mr. Modise, and Mr. Manuel as grand Lasaniers? In other words, as grand thieves?
Because my view is that this whole arms deal this arms deal in the main is irrational and a fairly large drain on the public purse, and there are clearly, to me at least, and I've brought some of that evidence, that a substantial amount of the covert commissions that were paid went to people in the ANC, and this was a scheme. The arms deal is a scheme, is my view, whereby there would be beneficiaries other than the arms of service and the public who are paying for it, and these particular people were in charge of the Ministers' Committee who were responsible for the arms deal.
Well, let's first deal with the idea of larceny. Larceny means theft, it means robbery, it means stealing, it means thieving, pilfering, and embezzlement. It has all those connotations. Do you agree?
Well, to be precise, I did actually respond to that. My own understanding is that it meant fraud. I think it's an American term, and maybe I got it wrong. But in my view, the arms deal has a constituent element of fraud, and I would, if it only means robbery and thievery, and I'm wrong that it means fraud, then I would apologize for that.
Well, this is the first time that you are apologizing for that. You were cross-examined about this extensively by my learned colleague. There was not a single apology. Do you agree?
All I'm saying is that I said at the time that my understanding was that it was fraud. He said it was theft. Now you're introducing all kinds of far more aggravating things like robbery, and which is robbery is theft with violence and whatever. If it means all of those things, if it really does mean that, then I would, and not just a more benign form of such as fraud. If it does mean those more violent things to which you refer, then and I'm wrong, then I would apologize in that context.
I see. So you are prepared to refer to late President Mandela, President Mbeki, Minister Modise, Mr. Manuel, Minister Irwin as grand fraudsters?
I am, in the context of them being responsible, and Mr. Mandela only, as I've said, and I maintain that, as it happening on his watch. The president of countries, chairman of cabinets are responsible for what happens on their watch, and I'm only making that statement. It sounds so terrible in these things, but it was made on a website which, to be honest, and to my own detriment, is not really viewed by many people, and it's at least half in a kind of an ugly jest. I would concede that, but on the other side is that it's my view that somebody had to be, if this arms deal is wrong and is illogical, which is my view, then somebody has to take responsibility, and if there's a collective responsibility, it has to be the members of the Ministers' Committee.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dr. Young, up to now, I don't quite understand why you refer to Mr. Mandela as a fraudster. The fact that he was the president of the country at that time and the head of cabinet, and something wrong happens. Let's assume you're right, something wrong happened. Does that make him a fraudster?
No, I think I very clearly explained what my use of his name in the context is if the arms deal contained elements of wrongdoing and fraud, then it's just a matter of it happening on his watch. That's what I explained, and that is my view. I maintain that view. I'm not suggesting that he himself was the chief of the fraudsters, other than he was the chief of the process. Well, let's say he was, responsible for what happened on his watch. That's all I'm saying. It goes no higher than that.
And what I don't understand about your attitude, Dr. Young, is that you are prepared to apologize if the connotation of larceny involves robbery, but you're not prepared to apologize if it involves fraud. I don't understand you.
Well, you see, you're not even thinking about your own question now, because you took me back to what I had said regarding my response to Advocate Cooper. You basically wanted to know why my answers were different. That is the reason why my answers are slightly different now, because I only used the term fraud. Advocate Cooper used the term theft, and theft is maybe worse than fraud, but it's not nearly the same as robbery. Fraud or even theft, then I would apologize that my understanding of the term larceny gave rise to my use of the term larceny, which doesn't exist in the English language. It's just kind of my unfortunately say negative sense of humor when I wrote this that was posted on my website.
You can't be serious. Sense of humor? Calling President Mandela a fraudster, a great fraudster? There's nothing funny about that.
Okay, I did not call him a giant fraudster. I did not call him a giant thief. I just called them the grand larceniers. It is the same as the Three Musketeers. That's my own, let's say, in this context is a negative one, the sense of humor that was meant to be. Certainly other people looking at it would see it differently, and I'm prepared to accept that.
Let's go to the next matter on the same page. 14th of February 2014. But instead, Mandela, Mbeki, Irwin, Modise, Manuel, Radebe, and others sacrificed this golden goose on the altars of avarice, gluttony, greed, conspicuous consumption, and dynasty construction. You obviously know what those words mean: avarice, gluttony, greed. Not so?
Yes, I do.
And you seriously attribute those qualities to President Mandela, President Mbeki, Minister Irwin, Minister Modise, Minister Manuel, Minister Radebe.
Exactly in the same context. It's just as the group of people who would be responsible at the Ministers' Committee level for, in my view, allowing something to happen which at least, I think I have at least tried to prove regarding the overt, the covert commissions, has a very substantial element of wrongfulness attached to it.
The next entry I'd like to refer to is the one of the 13th of March 2013. The real accountable persons are Mandela and his useful fool, Mbeki. Their arms deal chief spokesman was yet another useful fool, Alex Pinocchio Irwin. Do you confirm that this is what you put out to the world?
Yes, I did.
Just hold on. Were you really serious when you put this type of things on your website?
Not really. I mean, there was an element of seriousness to it, but it wasn't really meant to be for total worldwide consumption on a serious basis. As I said, it might seem warped now. Maybe it is warped, but it is a sense of, well, the use of the terminology, like Pinocchio, for example, certainly would convey some elements of it not being that serious. If it was that serious, I would have taken out adverts in the Sunday Times or whatever. This is just little actually scribblings at the end of press articles which get posted on the website. It's not 100% deadly serious. There is an element of it to it. It might sound all that wrong now, but it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be, or use the word, say, that serious. And it's,
to be honest with you, I don't quite understand you. You insult people in such a manner. You call them this type of names that we have on your website, and you want to tell us that you are not serious about it. To be honest with you, I don't quite understand that attitude. It appears to me that you are prepared to call anybody with any name, irrespective of how insulting that name is. And you want to tell us that you are not serious about that. To be honest with you, I don't quite understand that attitude, but in any event, I'll wait around, you can continue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm informed that since 2002, there have been 63,339 views of this website. Are you able to accept that?
It's interesting that somebody else has got that calculation, because I haven't seen that. But if that's what a bona fide determination is, then I've got no reason to dispute that.
And would that not appear on the website itself, that number?
At one stage, there was meant to be a counter, but I don't think I've even looked at this for a considerable period of time. But when I remember at one stage that counter had stopped working or was wrong a long time ago.
I'm informed that the counter is in perfect working order.
Well, that must mean that one of my IT people has resurrected it. The person who used to manage it, a woman, hasn't been there for a while, and only very recently has one of my engineers. Look, and he may have resurrected, but I haven't seen any. In fact, that figure is very surprising for me. But what I'm saying is I won't either dispute that it's correct and I won't dispute that it's recent. I don't know.
Dr. Young, why did you decide to use such vituperative language?
Because there were so many reasons why I should feel disaffected. The whole process in itself, the particular what I would personally, me and my company were subjected to, the fact that it at least seemed pretty clear to me after my own investigations into the joint report were specifically manipulated by these very same people to whom you refer. Other than Mr. Mandela, I don't think Mr. Radebe had anything to do with it, but it's clear that there was interference of the JRT report by these very people, and basically, I suppose it upset me, and this was the way that I responded.
I think now we are getting the truth. You are angry, you are hitting back, you are revenging in this manner. Not so?
It was just a response. I mean, my anger is, if it was all that strong, it is certainly much tempered more lately, 15 years down the track. But certainly at certain times, this what happened to me in the arms deal has not only taken up a huge portion of my adult life, but it actually came very close to destroying me and bankrupting my company.
Dr. Young, but this was last year. It's only last year. It's not that long ago.
I didn't say that. I said that my level, certainly the volume of my responses, the number of them has reduced substantially more lately. And certainly, you say it was last year. Okay, we're going back. I mean, it looks as though we can only find two. Well, there seem to be two here from 2014 in February, and then a couple here of two in 2013, and one in 2012. That's not that many lately. And of course, it also this isn't something that I just arbitrarily think. I'm going to get. I'm very upset one morning, and I wake up and I post something on my website. These are all in responses to articles, to press articles. I write very little. I think there's only one or two postings on this whole website, consisting of several thousand of press articles and other relevant documents. But they're all just responses where a press article has incorrectly quoted something else or hasn't taken found another viewpoint. And so it's not as though it's just a reaction to something that I'm reading myself, appending a comment of mine, and leaving it as that. And you can see just from the date there aren't that many more in the more recent times.
Will you agree with me that these remarks of yours are abusive and they are offensive?
They may be offensive. I'm not quite sure how abusive they are, but
but you are not sure how. Well, you say they might be insulted, but then you are not sure whether they are abusive. Can you look at page 6 of the same document?
So I was only the evidence that we're talking about. I was talking to last and years. If there's something else, that's something else. But in any case, you know, it is offensive. But I'm not sure exactly what the context of abuse is here. There's a right of response. There are people who can ask to remove this. So I'm not quite sure. At least, well, I've said it's offensive. I accept that. But how far does one go with abusive? You know, abusive is something, at least my own book, is something far more direct.
Okay, Maran, you can continue.
Dr. Young, you are accusing former President Mandela, former President Mbeki, and the others of theft or being major fraudsters. You're accusing them of greed. You are accusing them of piggishness. I put it to you that these remarks are slanderous and they are outrageous.
They are slanderous in the normal sense, but they would be outrageous in my own view, at least, if there was nothing whatsoever to precipitate such a response. Leaving aside President Mandela, and because I think I've explained that, but if the others are responsible for the arms deal and the arms deal is wrong, then certainly in my own view, it's not as though it's precipitated by nothing. It's been precipitated by something. It might be a view that you don't share. It might even be a view that I no longer hold. I don't. But it was at the time, it didn't come from zero.
Well, the one that talks about President Mandela and Mr. Alec Erwin being great fraudsters, as you understand the expression, was published the day before Mr. Alec Erwin gave evidence. In other words, he gave evidence on the 17th of February last year, and this article appeared on the 16th of February last year. What's your comment?
It was in the context of what had happened in the past. And if I may say so, I don't think that Mr. Irwin's but of course it's a post facto argument. He gave us evidence afterwards, so my observation was only in the context of the way I knew or thought that he'd handled the arms deal from to the year 2000. So it was made in that regard.
Dr. Young, you knew that he was going to give evidence on the 17th, didn't you?
I certainly can't remember knowing that now. I might have known it at the time, but I can't remember now.
Well, you remember that this was at a time after you had made application to cross-examine certain witnesses at the end of the previous year, 2013?
Look, I can accept that. All I'm saying is I don't remember the exact dates or that various things happened and whether they happened before or after.
Well, I put it to you that you utter these words so that there could be maximum effect. when Mr. Alec Irwin comes to give evidence?
I certainly don't remember that way.
In any event, why didn't you come to the commission and cross-examine Mr. Alec Irwin?
Well, the point is, where does it stop? Should I have cross-examined every single witness? There have been I don't know, 40 or 50 witnesses so far. If I was a retired guy with Bill Gates' kind of money and I was prepared to spend all this time in Pretoria, maybe I would have liked to do so. But I didn't do so. I've got no obligation to do so. I am another witness. So it just wasn't practical to do so.
You see, Mr. Alec Irwin was the first witness that gave evidence on behalf of the Interministerial Committee. So it would have been important for you, in the light of the allegations that you had made, at least to be present when he gives evidence, hear what he was going to say, and cross-examine him.
No. I was expecting other people to do that. I was quite disappointed in the fact that they didn't seem to get very far. And I certainly was concentrating on my own aspect of this. And as I said, I am another witness. There was no obligation for me to do so. I don't think that my summonses me to cross-examine other witnesses. It only says to appear as a witness myself. So it's that in that context that my conduct has been what it has.
In fact, as you probably know, nobody wanted to cross-examine Mr. Alec Irwin. Confirm that?
That may have been the upshot of it. I certainly was my understanding from before that is that people wanted to do so, but weren't able to do so.
You're also aware of the date when Mr. Mbeki was due to give evidence, not so?
No, I'm not. I just know that it did happen. I'm not aware of the date of it.
No. My question is, before Mr. Mbeki gave evidence, I'm putting it to you that you were aware that he was going to give evidence on a particular day.
I was aware that he was going to give evidence, but what I do remember is that particular day changed, whether it was once or more times. I thought it was actually a number of times, so I'm not exactly sure of when it was going to happen and when it did happen. I can't remember that.
I put it to you that there was great public interest. Firstly, there was great extensive publicity of the fact that he was going to give evidence on a particular day, and there was great public interest in that. Can you dispute that?
I'll accept that, and I think it was a bit of a damp squib because he didn't appear on the original date that was set.
I'm talking about the day on which Mr. Mbeki appeared. It was well known, particularly people who were interested in the work of the Commission and who had a contribution to make. They all knew the day on which Mr. Mbeki was due to testify.
Yes, I'm thinking back now. I do remember actually that his testimony was delayed due to the death of his mother, and that was by it wasn't just a day or two. It was a long. But certainly by the time it did happen, certainly for me, it was. My understanding is that a great deal of interest had actually been lost by the time it did happen.
In any event, the question I wish to ask you is, why didn't you come and cross-examine?
Well, this is maybe I'll be guilty of of a fallacious argument. But anyway, it's post facto. I personally realise, as a layperson, I don't want to cross-examine any other witness ever again myself when they are represented by professional legal practitioners. But that certainly was a consideration, and there's absolutely no ways, after the time and effort and the money that I've spent just on giving my own evidence, that I've wanted to retain equivalent senior counsel. I have considered it. If I look, just to do this myself with a legal team, I calculated it would have cost me over R1 million. If I would have, that was just myself. If I also had to get a senior counsel who don't operate on their own very often, and a legal team, then if I'd had to cross-examine just the witnesses that I wanted to, I'm talking about a handful, 3 or 4 or 5, that might have cost me R2 million. If you're saying that I should have cross-examined every single person there, then it might have cost me R50 million of legal fees. And so, again, I had no obligation to do so, and I've had to restrict myself to watching what other people might do and reading the transcripts of their evidence, and then if there was anything relevant, then I would deal with it when I was called as a witness.
Let's talk about the so-called DeLille dossier. Did you see that document?
I have seen that document.
Did you study it?
I've certainly read it a couple of times, not necessarily all at once, or studied it deeply. I've scanned it various, probably 3 or 4 times in the last 15 years.
You must have come to the conclusion that it was a bizarre document.
No.
And you must have come to the conclusion that it was lacking in substance.
No.
Mr. Terry Crawford Brown gave evidence for the Commission on the 9th of October this year. Last year, I beg your pardon. And at page 8609 of the transcript, this is what he said. As Patricia and I well know, the importance of the DeLille dossier was not its content, but the hysteria it evoked in the government and the witch hunt that followed. Patricia has brilliantly used that bizarre document for 15 years to fashion her political career, including her present position as mayor of Cape Town. Would you like to comment on that evidence?
How long have I got?
Do you agree with the sentiments expressed by Mr. Terry Crawford Brown?
No.
He further says the DeLille dossier was revealed as lacking in substance.
I certainly wouldn't take the position or the evidence of Terry Crawford Brown as the Gospel according to St. Terry.
Well, unfortunately, those instructing me agree entirely with Mr. Terry Crawford Brown on that particular aspect.
See, if you want me to elaborate on just one aspect, in fact, even in the words that you read out to me, don't necessarily mean precisely what some people might think. What is bizarre about that document, and part of it, is not so much what he meant, its contents. It's the hysteria that it created. I mean, think logically. If it created a hysteria in the government, and it was completely bizarre in its own right, in its own accord, people would have just written it off, would have just rubbished it, would have just laughed about it. But people took it extremely seriously, so much so that, from what I know, is that Patricia DeLille was receiving death threats. I think that she put that on the record. Okay, it doesn't make any logical sense. And if I may say for myself, I am fairly deeply steeped in logic, other than when it comes to the correct choice of words for writing on my website. I'll say I need a serious re-education camp on that. But nevertheless, the simple logic is that much of what is in that report is not absolutely bizarre. I have worked out more or less where that came from, and certainly there are things that are wrong or maybe illogical or maybe bizarre, but you can't write it off all. I can't remember whether it's 20 or 30 pages. I know there's annexes and things. You cannot write off that document in its totality as bizarre. And I don't think that Mr. Crawford Brown meant that every single aspect of it was bizarre. And I certainly know that certain aspects of it are true and certain aspects of it are relevant.
I put it to you very bluntly, Dr. Young, that document, the DeLille dossier, is just a load of rubbish. And Mr. Terry Crawford Brown confirmed that it lacked substance.
It's not a load of rubbish. It might contain some rubbish. It might, I don't say, I'm just arithmetically speaking, it might be 50% rubbish. It might be 70% rubbish. But it is not complete rubbish. It certainly might have lacked substance. But I tell you what, for its date, now this is long after, it was long before that I started investigating, as the way you started off this cross-examination. I only started investigating things related to me a year or two later. From what I can remember, that document was in the era of September 99. I think that's when Patricia DeLille used her right of absolute privilege to stand up in Parliament, and I don't know whether she waved it around, but it was typically a 99 era document. For what was known and reported in that document for that stage is actually quite substantial. In fact, just using a pointed example, it took the JRT report, which you've referred to yourself, the JRT investigation initiated in the middle of 2000, or let's say in the preliminary stages. It ended in December 2001. Yet it took the overseas investigators in the UK and Germany until 2007 to actually to find relevant information regarding irregularity or bribery, fraud is just the general term of wrongfulness, that had initially been indicated at least, maybe without substance, in that little report. So it couldn't have been rubbish. It had to have some substance, in that the SFO and the German investigators found direct evidence of that all those years later. So I would say it's not. In fact, what I can say is, having written a couple of documents and theses and dissertations myself, it's certainly not the most well written document that I've ever seen. Knowing a little bit about documents, it is actually authored by a whole bunch of people. Some of them, their stuff is more rubbish than others. Some of them, the stuff in there is not rubbish at all. And you'd rubbish the whole report. It's not rubbish, or not complete rubbish.
Let's move on. Dr. Gavin Woods, how well do you know him?
I have met him in the flesh maybe 4 or 5 times in the last 15 years. And I've spoken to him on the phone maybe 24 times in the same period. I don't know him. He's not a house friend. He's just unfortunately, we now seem to be in the same boat of whistleblowers, at least as far as the arms deal exists at this stage in 2015.
I take it that you accept that he would be more familiar with President Mbeki, Minister Manuel, Mr. Irwin, the Lekota and Casseroles than you are, having worked with them in Parliament.
Sorry, I didn't get that at all.
What I'm asking you and putting to you is that Dr. Gavin Woods would have been more familiar with, he would have better known President Mbeki, Minister Manuel, former Minister Irwin, the Lekota and Casseroles than you, having worked with them in Parliament. That's the question.
If your question is, do I know Gavin Woods better than those others, I would say yes. Well, I don't know the others at all, so the answer has to be yes. Yes, well, I don't think you explained that clearly. Certainly, I didn't understand. Yes, I'm sure he would know. Well, clearly, I said I don't know them, and I wasn't in Parliament like Gavin Woods was. I would certainly hope he knows them better than me.
At page 8098 of the transcript, Dr. Gavin Woods gave this evidence on the 2nd of September last year. He was asked, President Mbeki, Mr. Manuel, former Minister Irwin, Lekota and Casseroles, you are not saying that any of those persons were involved in corruption? Then his answer was, of the names you mentioned, I think I heard you correctly, not saying that in fact I have defended President Mbeki. I observed him for many years, and not that I am the ultimate judge of character, but self-enrichment has never been a part of his make-up, as far as I could observe. That would surprise me. And I would say the exact same for Ministers Manuel and Irwin and Lekota. Do you have any comment to make?
No, I would agree. There doesn't seem to be any indication of self-enrichment regarding those people.
Then why did you describe them as sacrificing the golden goose on the altars of avarice, gluttony, greed, conspicuous consumption, and dynasty construction?
Because of two reasons. One is my theory, is that a large proportion of the covert commissions went to the party. These are all party people, and much of what was done was not necessarily for self-enrichment, but for the good of the party. And the other is that somebody, if the theory is correct, that things were wrong, it has to be those people who have to be accountable for what went wrong. It's purely in that context.
I personally wonder why should we be wasting our time with theories. We need facts here.
Well, I'm being asked facts about my position, and that is my factual position. I don't have facts. I've just said I don't have facts regarding self-enrichment, but there are certainly indications that the party was a recipient or a beneficiary, or party-related structures were recipients of what one call, well, let's say, funding.
Is that theory or fact now?
It's my understanding.
Thank you.
My problem with you, Dr. Young, is that you're now admitting to telling a deliberate lie. You knew that these people were not avaricious, they were not gluttonous, they were not greedy, but still you label them as such. And these people being President Mandela, President Mbeki, Mr. Owen, Modise, Manuel, but you label them as such.
Again, you're getting it wrong and you're putting words in my mouth. I haven't called them those terms. I've used the term very specifically, is sacrifice on the altar of those things. It is other people who were the beneficiaries, the major beneficiaries of the money. It was, I'll just use an example. There's the term dynasty construction. It is certain individuals who used financial gains from the arms deal in that context. That's not those specific people. I'm just saying effectively those people allowed this thing to happen. They have to be accountable or responsible, and it is others who are the more conspicuous beneficiaries of it. If my theory is correct, that people like Chippy Sheikh and a group represented by others, and Vanas Longwana, whatever, if they are the recipients, some person or grouping grouping of people have to take responsibility for allowing that to happen. That's the only point I was trying to make there.
I'm sorry to great Melanie. Don't you think that we have sufficiently dealt with this document? We all know what the document is and what the intention of Dr. Young was when he published this document, well, when he published this in his website.
Chair, actually the intention was not to deal with the document. The intention was to deal with particular people in the light of evidence that has been given by so-called whistleblowers, etc. This was just a reference to the document because it seems to indicate something that the witness does not believe in at all, but he decided to publish it. For that purpose, I'm done with the document. Okay. I think at this stage, it is appropriate just to put it to you that the whole edifice that you have constructed here is based on theory, it's based on hypothesis, and it's not based on hard evidence.
Are you saying that in respect of this particular portion of evidence, or are you saying that is with respect to all of my evidence, written and oral, over the last 3 weeks? Are you saying that you're asking me a question? So exactly what does your question mean? Is it specific to these people who've I've bad-mouthed in terms of my website, or is it all of my evidence that I've given over the last 3 weeks?
Well, that's a fair question. I represent the interministerial committee that dealt with reports and recommendations that came from below and transmitted whatever deliberations they had made and decisions that arrived at or recommendations to Cabinet, for Cabinet to take the final decision. Now, the point I'm putting to you is that any allegation that that interministerial committee was guilty of any corruption, firstly, is not true.
I'm not aware that I have made direct allegations of corruption against the members of what I call MINCOM. I'm not aware of that. What I have made allegations is that there is allegations of impropriety, and I will give you 2 examples. Impropriety regarding the changing of the JRT report. Another specific one is, to show that I'll deal with this as honestly as I can. I use the term Pinocchio Irwin. Pinocchio means liar, a person who's inclined to lie. And that, unfortunately, I'll use in the context of Alec Irwin, but it's an example. There's been so many statements on behalf of this interministerial committee, the Cabinet, the government, that the government has nothing to do with subcontracting. That, I think the GCIS has published that on behalf of them. I've heard it said from his own mouth when I was as a public member of the SCOPA, Alec Irwin saying that. Yet, I'm using it as just a simple example, but if you go to my evidence that I've given over the last 3 weeks, I've adduced documents that, with beyond any doubt whatsoever, not a reasonable doubt, any doubt whatsoever, the government was involved in many, many elements of subcontracting. It's simple. He has stated we are not. He said, in fact, angrily at one stage, there was the ministers' meeting that they had here at the Johannesburg International Airport. I'm going back. I think it was the 12th of January 2001. The Auditor General doesn't understand procurement. The government does not involve itself in subcontracting. And yet the evidence shows otherwise, even in this. And I had to bring some of that evidence. So that's why I call him Pinocchio, because it's just not true. And he would know it's not true, or if he didn't know it's not true, unfortunately he is not given that leeway if he's actually representing the Cabinet and Mincom and making that statement, because it was known. This is what I can remember during the investigations, though that evidence would have been known by then. So what I'm saying is that in certain instances there is good reason why I'm not just complaining about corruption. That's another leg. I'm complaining about irregularity of decisions, and undue influence, and impropriety. Simple as that. And I think, if I may say so, in those specific instances, I have proven my case beyond any doubt whatsoever.
Well, as far as Minister Alec Owen is concerned, he gave his evidence here, and he was not cross-examined. And so we are going to ask at the end of the hearings that Mr. Alec Owen's evidence should be accepted in its entirety.
Make a response to that? Well, I would certainly, I understand, well, I've read from the website that a ruling was made that only witnesses with legal representatives may make submissions for argument. I would certainly, in that context, request that I also be allowed to make submissions and argument to counter that kind of stuff, even if I have to retain legal professionals to do it. But I would certainly like to be able to make my own submissions to counter those. Specifically, what I think is a common cause is that no witness has an obligation to cross-examine another witness.
I'm sorry, I'll get my line. Dr. Young, I don't think you're right by saying that only people with legal representatives will be allowed to make closing submissions.
I have read that on the website, on the transcripts.
Can you give me a chance to finish? Thank you. Any person who has an interest in these proceedings, whether with or without legal representation, will be entitled to make submissions. Will be entitled to this.
Thank you for that.
I further put it to you that at the submission stage, we shall submit that witnesses Mr. Mbeki, Mr. Manuel, Mr. Casserels, Mr. Lekota, and Mr. Owen's evidence should be accepted in its entirety as being credible and as evidencing no indications of fraud, corruption, impropriety, or any irregularity. What's your comment?
I suppose I wouldn't expect anything less of you.
And finally, we shall also submit that the decision, which was finally taken by Cabinet in respect of the arms acquisition process, is not tainted by any irregularities, corruption, improprieties. What's your comment?
Well, it may not be at the MINCOM or say the deputy president or presidential level, but if you mean that from the perspective of the government, then if any of my evidence regarding the chief of acquisition is found to be correct, then that would certainly show that the process was tainted by irregularity and impropriety.
And finally, I put it to you that your evidence is based on speculation, it's based on hypothesis, it's based on rumor, it's based on information or documentation of unproven provenance and is inadmissible.
No, you might be correct if this was a court of law, and then my burden of proof, I would have had a burden of proof, and maybe the bar might have been set higher. But if that had been my burden, then I would have approached this commission somewhat differently. I would have been here with a battery of lawyers and advocates, and I would have spent, for example, on the BAE Whanahlangwana aspect, I might have spent 3 or 4 weeks alone doing that. I might have, if I was allowed to, it was the court of law, of course I would have been allowed to bring the witnesses from Switzerland, from the United Kingdom, from Germany, from France. I would have brought them here at my expense if I had to, if it was a court of law. So unfortunately, the comment that you're making is completely irrelevant in my own view of my understanding of the workings of and the reasons for this commission. I had no burden of proof, and if I had one, I should have been told that in advance. I certainly canvassed that very aspect a number of times with my various evidence leaders. So unfortunately, of course, you may try what you may try. You might try what you may in terms of your submissions, but I would certainly hope to be able to counter them, and I think that they would fall on fallow ground if they are in respect of the proper terms and conditions and my obligations as regards to my giving of evidence before this commission.
And to be fair to you, we shall submit that the quality of your evidence, the manner in which it was presented, is such that it has very, very little weight, particularly because it is based on a desire to revenge. It's based on considerations of malice and abusiveness. Your comment, please.
Well, you see, you're wrong. There is a element of abusiveness and maybe malice and anger, as is only borne out on comments made on my website. In general, almost throughout, I have been interviewed and quoted very extensively in this arms deal. I have been interviewed live on TV, specifically regarding your main client, Mr. Mbeki's involvement, where I got accused directly of making these accusations based on racism, and I kept my cool, very, very, very cool. I've appeared on Carte Blanche. I've appeared on many things. And the only instance that you have is regarding these small snippets, which might look a lot together, but over 15 years they actually are not. But otherwise, all of my evidence has been cool, calm, and collected, as it has been mainly in the face of a bludgeoning by questioning in certain regards. So fortunately, you're asking me for my view. So I would say that whatever personal issues there might be, that is only a very a small sector of it. The rest of my evidence has been very substantial, without me being able to call other witnesses to corroborate my evidence regarding the German investigations, regarding the British aerospace investigations. But my reference to DOD documents, to Arms Corps documents, in fact, very, very, very little of my evidence has actually used anything that I've created myself. I made that a mission for myself. I've proven a lot of things based on DOD and Arms Corps and Thompson, encrypted faxes, all kinds of things. And for the bar set as it is for this purpose of commission, in fact, I think I'm not a high jumper, but I have cleared the bar quite adequately.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. I was made to understand that your view today is that you are not going to cross-examine.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. We are going to be putting a few issues to Dr. Young for his comments. It should not take more than an hour, Mr. Commissioner.
Chair, I beg your pardon. While the commissioners ponder on the way forward, I would make a request that we take a short adjournment. I need a body break. The water is just making it impossible for me to continue.
Maybe let's take a 15 minutes break. And then I'm sure you're going to consider very carefully whether you need 1 hour or 30 minutes.
Indeed, I'm going to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's remove the people. Yeah,